Hello, can you hear me? I hope you can. How can I get to know if you can hear me? I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
that's good. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. And I would just like to point out that it's possible that you might be disappointed because I'm not going to give many sort of cookbook advice to get your students motivated. I would just maybe more like to think about with all of you, think about how motivation works and what motivation and creativity actually are. And I had to, so first I would like to, how do you move this? Can't really move that. Yes, sorry, we are having some technical difficulties with the presentation slides. Okay, great. So Mr. Tuan will take care of it. So yeah, so my name is Ondrej Slowik, and I come from the Czech Republic, and I did my BA stage in Anglo-American and Vietnamese studies in Prague, in the Czech Republic, also partially in Sheffield, and also partially in Hanoi at the National University. Then I moved to the MA stage in English linguistics, and I think it came back. Now I can do the presentation myself. Great. So I did my MA stage in English linguistics and teaching English as a foreign language. And my thesis was rhythm in Vietnamese English, North Vietnamese, because I gathered the material in Hanoi. And then I moved on to my PhD stage, and I finished my PhD in phonetics in 2018. And my thesis was lexical tone in Vietnamese metropolis, meaning Hanoi and the Ho Chi Minh City. And currently, I'm a lecturer at the English department of Hong Bang University at Dien Bien Phu. And so I would like to thank Hoa Sen for inviting me here. And let's begin with the presentation. So as you could notice, I had to change the topic of the presentation slightly, and it's because if you've heard about Sir Ken Robinson, he used to talk a lot about motivation and creativity in education in general and in learning languages. And unfortunately, he passed away last week. So I decided to partially turn this presentation into a tribute to Sir Ken Robinson. If you don't know who he is, then I strongly recommend you to watch his TED Talks on YouTube, because especially the first one, where he talks about education and creativity, was the most watched TED Talk in the history of the whole program. And I think you will actually enjoy it, because he was a very, very sweet sounding man with a really nice English accent. So basically, the main idea that I would like to talk about today is, as Ken Robinson says, that we are actually educating people out of their creative capacities. I believe this passionately, that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it, or rather we get educated out of it. So the education part here for me is very important, and I think that in Vietnam it's actually even more true than in the West nowadays, because what Ken Robinson says, that every child is actually born an artist, and the problem is that we actually lose the artistic capacity as we grow up. And actually, not that our education system is not helping to preserve our creativity, but even to the contrary, our education system is actually trying to kill our creativity. And that's something that we should change. And I think that especially in Vietnam, that should be really paid attention to. So next. Yeah, this is my personal sort of observation-based idea. So please don't kill me if you don't agree with me. Or we can actually discuss that in the QA section later. But in my 5 years in Vietnam and about 10 years learning about Vietnamese culture and language and history, I came up with a few statements that I think are true. Like, Vietnamese system of education glorifies verbatim solutions, meaning actually you score the best points if you can repeat the teacher's ideas or statements as accurately as possible. I can still remember myself learning Vietnamese in Hanoi, and we were having a final exam, and a speaking assignment of the final exam was to listen to the teacher telling us a story and try to retell the story in our own words. And I remember very vividly that I actually did that. I understood, and back then my Vietnamese wasn't very good, but I was very proud of myself that I understood what the teacher was saying. But at the end, the teacher was like, yeah, you actually said everything correctly, or you remembered everything correctly, but you didn't use my words, you used your own, and that's why you're not getting an A, but you're just getting a B. And there was a Russian student in my class, and she actually she had like a photographic memory or some kind of very, very strong memory that she could remember word by word what the teacher said, and she got an A+. But then I remember about 2 months later, we went somewhere to a pub or something, and she tried to call a taxi, and the taxi driver didn't understand her because she couldn't. Her pronunciation was quite off, and her Vietnamese generally wasn't very good. But she got better grades. Although then I had to actually talk to the taxi driver and tell him where she needed to go, where he needed to take her. So at the same time, and I still remember it now after 10 years. So it actually influenced my personality or even the learning processes. And I remember at first I was very sad because I got a B, although I felt like I really did the assignment really well. And at the same time, later on, I got my satisfaction when I could watch that girl being a bit sad for not being able to talk to the taxi driver. So, and then also the Vietnamese people can actually, or the society can produce anything, like any product, very quickly, and it's for a very cheap price. But the thing is that the invention here is not very on a very high level. If you look at it, what is a typical Vietnamese product? Okay, now we have VinFast, the company, so that may be an exception, actually standing for the rule. But you know, like you get motorcycles, cell phones made here, but it's all Korean or Japanese, or you have many products that are clothes and shoes and everything is made here, but nothing is actually designed here. So that is my personal argument for lack of creativity in Vietnam. And if you look at creative people in Vietnam, it's actually at the beginning, their endeavor is always mocked or relativized, in the sense that people don't trust that idea, and they think, oh, you're gonna fail, that's not, you know, it's not, you're not going to be successful, you should stick with what you know, what your parents used to do and your ancestors. And then immediately after that person succeeds with the new idea, then it's copied, you know. And that's also something that I think it kills creativity, because if you are inventive but you know that you can't really live off your inventions because it's going to be copied immediately, then it steals your creativity away. And if you look at the richest and the most successful Vietnamese people, most of them actually been educated abroad, or they have a long-term life experience with foreign countries. even the owner of VinFast, right? He was like, I think he set up a business in the Ukraine, and he became rich there, and then eventually he came back to Vietnam to grow his empire. So these are some of my arguments for the lack of creativity in Vietnam, and we can discuss that after. So, and fear of being wrong, that's one thing that I have to fight all the time, or I get in conflict all the time when I teach in Vietnam. As Sir Robinson says, that if you are not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original, right? And being wrong doesn't mean you're original. That's also a problem. Like if you're a student, and that happens a lot in the West, like, oh, I think it's this way, the student says, but you're a teacher, you have the experience, and you probably know better. But not always, that's the point. Like, usually you do, but you should still leave space for the students to question your ideas. On the other hand, if you are never wrong, then you can never be original, because you always just fear that you fail, and you fear to discover anything new. And that happens a lot in Vietnam. So if you are an English teacher or a language teacher, then you have to learn that error is your friend, not your enemy. And if you are a student, then even more so, because you learn by your own errors, right? And especially educated errors are something that I think should be encouraged, even. Because if you look at the example below, if you look at the sentence, yesterday I went to school, which is grammatically correct, then if you are a teacher in Vietnam, the most common mistake you will encounter is the sentence next to it, yesterday I go to school. And that's a bad thing, because it means that the person learning is not actually thinking about the language, because you tell them, okay, English needs tenses, right? Because in Vietnamese, you don't really need tenses that much. You say, yesterday I go to school, and it's a perfectly okay sentence. But if a Vietnamese student says, yesterday I go to school, then yes, you can let yourself loose on him and say, okay, this is a mistake, and you have to think harder, and you have to improve yourself. But if the student says, yesterday I go to school, which is also wrong, then I think that this mistake or this error shouldn't be perceived with the same level of strength or a negative sort of feeling, because it actually shows you that the student is thinking about the language, and that they are actually thinking about what they are saying. So in fact, in my personal opinion, I think that if a student makes this mistake, you should actually reward him or praise the student for being at least partially inventive, or not being too repetitive, or just too consumed by learning everything by heart. Then creativity in foreign language acquisition in Vietnam. I would like to list some concrete examples. You really need creativity in your classroom, especially when you're practicing speaking skills or writing skills, because if you don't have creative students, then even your job as a teacher is a lot harder. And the students, if they're not creative, then they will definitely learn a lot more slowly, and with a lot less success. So if you look at some of these questions that I mentioned here, what did you do at the weekend is a question that I usually ask my students when they come to school, because I want to engage them and try and make them speak, because speaking skills are usually the most problematic in Vietnam, or with Vietnamese learners of English or foreign languages. And so I pose this question. I say, what did you do at the weekend? And the student says, obviously, nothing, or sleeping. And when the student says nothing, then you're done. You can't really do anything. So nothing. So you have to move on, or you have to really try hard and question the student further. Or if he or she says sleeping, then at least you can go like, okay, so what did you dream about? And then they go, nothing. And you're done again. And then that's just to illustrate that if you don't have creative students, then your job as a teacher is hell, basically. And or some other question. So what do you like to eat? And they say rice. And you go, okay. And then you have 20 more students and you ask the same question and they all say rice. And I even tell my students sometimes, like, just lie, just, I think it doesn't matter. You can lie. Then it's just the learning process. It's not about saying or telling the truth. It's about speaking a lot and using a lot of words and a lot of structures and sentences so you can improve. But if you every week you come to school and you go like, okay, I did nothing and I eat rice all the time, then you will never improve yourself. And the teacher will eventually commit suicide because teaching like that for a long period of time is very psychologically demanding. And then in writing skills, obviously, it's difficult to work with topics of choice, meaning letting your students choose what they would like to write about, because they don't know what to write about, and they will always come up with something really ordinary or something that is not very interesting. And I personally really enjoy students who have a really wild fantasy, and they write, even if it's not grammatically correct, and they write these fancy or even crazy stories that you can actually elaborate on, and then you can actually even read that in front of the class and get some more speaking skills activities out of that. And also when you lack creativity, then you have difficulties with structure of the text, because usually you learn one sort of cookbook structure and you use it all the time, so all your texts look the same. And then eventually, if you need to write for your job or use writing skills to make money, then you will be less successful, because you will only know a very limited amount of structures that you can use. And also the struggle with minimal word count, because I remember that even from myself when I was studying at the university, and I had to write at first 500 words. Okay, it wasn't too bad. Then 1,500, and then 3,000, and it's like you would be just hypnotizing the word count in your Word file, and like, oh, well, I will, and then you will use more articles and more Latin words or Greek words compared to the Old English or Germanic words, because the Latin and Greek words are longer, right? So you get more characters and more words like that. And that's something that I think that creative people don't really have to think about, because it's just in their heads. So to be more concrete, I would like to share with you one creative way of learning new vocabulary, or learning actually anything new. This I'm still trying to get to the bottom of this. I'm quite an enthusiast of this sort of memory palace learning stuff, but I still can't do it because I've just been in it for about half a year, and it's really, you need a lot more time. So if you've never heard of the memory palace, it's a way that helps people learn things quickly, and you can use it for sort of magic tricks, like learning the precise order of a deck of cards. Like every deck of cards, like poker cards, is like what, 54 cards, and you can shuffle the cards. And people who can actually do memory palace very well, they can actually learn that order in minutes, or the record is even like in seconds. And the way you do this is like, at first you need to imagine a place, or look at a picture or a photograph of a place, and the teachers usually say that it should be a place that you know very well, so you don't have to spend your mental capacity thinking about what's where, but something that you can imagine immediately, and you can imagine the immediate order of the things that you're gonna encounter at that place. So here I just took a random picture from the internet, and so that this is just a picture of some house and the stairs, right? And in the next slide, you just number the smaller locations, or the individual locations. Like you have the first, like at the stairs on the left, then the ledge, then the stairs, then the wall, then the bottom of the stairs, right? And you go on like that. And this is what you have to prepare in advance before you start the memory palace, actually. I mean, the strategy to learn. So you do this, and next you can have a look at we just, for the sake of our example, just do 4 points. So now you associate the points with the either vocabulary, or in this example, the elements of the periodic table. So I will just shortly teach you the first 4 elements of the periodic table, and using memory palace. So you can have a look at the first location, right? Top of the stairs on the left. And the first element in the periodic table is hydrogen. And we need a mnemonic image to represent hydrogen, which could be sun, because it's mostly made of hydrogen. So you imagine a picture of the sun at the position 1. Then the second location is the ledge next to the stairs, and the second element of the periodic table is helium, right? So you imagine a helium balloon tied to the stone at the position 2. Third location, and the third element is lithium. And so you imagine a lithium battery rolling down the stairs, right? And fourth location is the sloping base of the wall, and the fourth element is beryllium. So you can see beryllium is like berry. So you imagine a berry being smashed against the wall, right? And so if I now go back to the picture, so now you, or I can actually go to the next one. So now you take the path through your memory palace. So you start with a picture of the sun, because you still remember the sun, and sun is associated with hydrogen. So you're at the stairs up here, and you have the sun there, which is hydrogen. Then you go lower here to the balloon that is tied there. So you see the balloon there, and you associate it with helium. Then the 3 is the third location. You can see the lithium battery rolling down the stairs. Fourth location is the berry smashed against the wall, which is beryllium. And now, even though maybe a minute ago you didn't know anything about the periodic table, you very easily know the 4 first elements of the table. And I bet you will remember them for at least a week, or maybe a month, or maybe forever. And so now I would like to show you the same thing with vocabulary. This is obviously more difficult, because it's easier to learn things that are in order, like numbers or letters. But you can use that for languages, learning numbers or alphabet. But it's easier for cards, or numbers, or the periodic table, which is sort of an ordered table of elements. But I've just, yesterday when I was preparing this, I came up with these 4 words that I think people can learn when they start learning Vietnamese. So if you look at the first location, and you can imagine a girl with a conical hat sitting, because the conical hat is, when you learn Vietnamese, the most important thing is the tones and the diacritical signs. So like the mo, the hat, right? So you can imagine a girl with a conical hat, which is the mo, and singing a song, and song is the word, right? Crossing a river in a boat. So you know that some is a river, because that you can see the hat on the girl, and then singing a song, which is the word, and on a river. And the second location, you can see that, or you can imagine a man sitting there and singing a song, Life is Life, while walking up the stairs. So you have to see like the song "Life is Life," because "som" is life, right, or live, and the tone goes up, so the man goes up the stairs. And the third location, there is an old lady walking up the hill or up the stairs again, trying to sell tea illegally, and then the police come and ban her from doing so. So you have the ban, it's because she's walking up the stairs, right? And ban or yeah, I mean, in English it doesn't really work, but it doesn't matter because your memory or your brain can actually adjust these things. So the word ban is not the same like but it doesn't really matter. Your brain can cope with it. And the fourth one, the last one, your friend was banned from the bar for sitting on a bowling ball, right? Because the dot underneath the word ban is you can imagine a bowling ball, and your friend is the meaning of the word, and was banned from the bar. So like this, you can actually learn a lot of vocabulary, and the people who are really good with this, they can learn 10, 20 words per day, and they can actually remember them for a long time or even forever. And if you have ever tried to binge learn vocabulary like this, it's really complicated, and you have to really spend a lot of time repeating. And it's actually the worst problem about that. It's terribly boring, and nobody likes doing that, right? So this is actually fun. And if you think about it, if you do this for a year, every day 10 words, then basically in a year you can learn more than 3,500 words. And if you look at the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, the whole dictionary is comprised of 3,000 words, or actually the definitions are, because the dictionary has a lot of words in it, but the definitions are only written in a way that they are using 3,000 words. So if you know the most common 3,000 words in English, you can actually understand any definition in the Learner's Dictionary. And they say that 3,000 words is about B1 level of language proficiency, which is in terms of, I don't know IELTS how many, but it's like the FCE exam in the British, on the British scale, which is quite high, because when you start at A0 and in 1 year you get your vocabulary from A0 to B1, that's really quick. That's usually language learning doesn't happen this fast. But obviously you have to be really devoted and really well familiar with this method to be able to be this quick and this efficient. So this was just one concrete example how creativity can be used in language learning. And if you are not creative, this will not work for you, because you will struggle with creating all these funny and crazy stories. And actually the experts say that the crazier the stories are and people die there, there is blood or whatever, and that like looks like an action movie, the easier for your brain it is to remember what you're trying to remember. Okay, so now let's get to motivation. And so the basic definition of motivation is the experience of desire or aversion, in easier words, that you want something or you want to avoid or escape something, right? And so there are two types, or like motivation can be sort of classified within 4 categories, or 2 categories with 2 groups, meaning negative and positive, and external or internal, or sometimes it's called extrinsic and intrinsic. Meaning external is a motivation that comes from within, and internal is the motivation that comes from yourself. And unfortunately, most school systems, and I think in Vietnam it's even more prominent, most school systems use negative external motivation, meaning if you do not do A, I will punish you, or the consequence will be negative. So that's induced fear, and it's actually even scientific studies showed that if you fear or if you're afraid of something, then your capacity to learn new things plummets or goes down. And so learning with fear is really not a good educational strategy, and especially with fear that doesn't come from within yourself, but that somebody else is actually posing on you. That's really not a good educational strategy. Then one step up that the school system is actually capable of is positive external motivation, meaning if you do B, then I will reward you, or the consequence will be positive, which is better because it takes out the element of fear. But it has its drawbacks, because when the positive stimulus finishes, then the performance usually goes down, because it's like the Pavlov experiment and the Pavlov dogs, right? When you feed them, they do what you want, but when you stop feeding them, then gradually they still do what you want, but not always. And then if you stop feeding them, I mean, if you stop feeding dogs, they will die, right? But I mean, for the purposes of the experiment. So if you stop feeding the dogs for the purposes of the experiment, then gradually they will lose their skill, because they will not see any advantage in actually doing it further, because they are not getting any reward for that. And that happens to a lot of students who we can call nerds, let's say, who score really well at school, but once they are stopped giving, I mean, they are not being given grades anymore, or they are not graded anymore, then they lose their motivation and they actually stop learning, and they even tend to forget whatever they've learned before. So that's the sort of very common issue with people who say, oh, I had to take an exam about this 2 years ago at the university, but now I don't remember anything. So I think that's precisely because they lack positive external motivation, because there is nothing forcing them to exercise that skill, and they that's why they don't really need to try anymore. Then there is negative internal motivation, which is, I want to do A because I fear the consequences. And that's, you can imagine this, for example, when you're in let's say a prison, and they threaten you that, okay, if you don't learn our language, we will kill you, right? So that's a good, I mean, considerably good motivation. If you want to live, you actually have to try hard not to be killed. And you can see that even what I've read about the war with America in Vietnam, there were actually some American soldiers who managed to learn Vietnamese very well, because they were given the motivation that, okay, if you can pass the test with 100% or 90%, then you can keep on learning and you don't have to go fighting. So these people were saying, like, okay, that's a good motivation. I don't really want to, fear for my life. So if I score well with this course, then I can keep doing it, and I don't have to take part in the war. And so these were one of the few soldiers, Vietnamese soldiers, who could learn Vietnamese really well, and they can still speak it until now. So that's the negative internal motivation. That may be good in the sense that you will learn a lot, but it can damage you psychologically, because many people fear, they want to get a job and they want to make money, but they fear that, oh, okay, if I don't do this, or if I can't succeed, then I will, nobody will like me, and my parents will talk badly about me. So that is like internal motivation that is negative, and it might work, but it's harmful for your mental health, I would say. And then the best scenario is the positive internal motivation. So it means that I want to do B because I can appreciate the positive consequences ahead of me. So that's ideal for any learning process. And as a teacher, you should be able to elicit or provoke this kind of feeling in your students. And that's what I'm going to, in a minute, talk about and conclude with. And because well-motivated learners a learner is happier and learns faster. That's a given. That's like everybody knows that. If you have motivation, you can even have a bad teacher and you will still learn very well. Because, for example, I learned Vietnamese mostly from stay home drivers, and they were not even teaching me, or most people in Vietnam weren't actually teaching me, but I had good motivation, and that's why I learned. So if we look at the case study of motivation of the HIU students, so if you look at the top students, so some of them grew bilingual or lived a substantial period of time abroad, which actually is not their own motivation, but I mean, it's not their own achievement that they actually learned English, because it happened sort of naturally. But even behind this natural issue, there is motivation, and it's internal motivation, because you go abroad or you have to interact with foreigners, and then you have the desire to communicate and to tell them stuff and interact with them, and that makes you really want that from the bottom of your heart, let's say, which is actually the definition of the internal motivation. But that's something you can't really elicit in your classroom, because you can't really, you can send the students abroad, or you can try to make them talk to foreigners where English or the foreign language is the only means of communication. So that will help, but it's really difficult to sort of to stage this or act this out. And then the second group of the top students, their learning languages is their hobby, which is also something that you can't really influence. And that's maybe the point, or the core of the internal motivation, that it really has to come out of the person, and you as a teacher can't really do much about it. So usually the people who already have it just like don't try to adjust anything. They already know their way, and that's maybe, as a teacher, the most important thing is like, let them live. Like, they know what they're doing already, so you don't have to worry about that. You just spoon feed them interesting ideas or articles or videos or topics that you can discuss, and just let them watch go about their ways on their own. So if learning languages is your hobby, then you're fine, because you always find a motivation to do it. It's my case, because I learned English, and then Vietnamese, Russian. I can speak a bit of German, and I mean, money is not really the motivation. It's all about just it's like people like playing football. I don't. So I like learning languages. And then probably the internal motivation that you can work with the best is the one under C. So they see English as a tool for interaction with foreigners, for reading books, watching movies, even gaming. I mean, people tend to think about gaming as something really negative, but I mean, I myself learned a lot from Baldur's Gate, which, I mean, most of you probably weren't even born when I was playing Baldur's Gate, but I learned a lot of English from that. Or making money, and in Vietnam, people tend to enjoy making money. So if you can actually see English as a tool or as a means of making money, then your motivation is also good. And on the other hand, if you look at weak students at our university, it's always, almost always, the common denominator or the common factor is that they lack motivation. They either have no motivation, so they didn't know what to study, and so they chose English because they felt like, okay, why not? Let's try. Everybody needs English, so maybe I will find the motivation on the way. Or the even worse group, and in Vietnam that's quite prominent, because the relationship between family and children, or parents and children, is very strong, and it's a lot more sort of strict than in the West. So parents force you to study English, or force you to study anything. In my personal opinion, we can discuss that later on as well. If you do something because your mom wants that, just that's not going to work. If that's your only motivation, then you will not succeed. You will be frustrated, and even like later on, she will be sad. You will lose money because you will just throw money out of the window. So I think, yeah. So awakening motivation for learning. So what you should do as a teacher, in my opinion, the long-term factor you can't really influence, because I mean, you can with your own children, or maybe with students who are just entering the learning process nowadays. So you support creativity from early age, and because creativity constitutes a fertile ground for motivation. So if you don't kill motivation in your kids, I mean creativity in your kids, then they will definitely have a lot easier time looking for their own internal motivation. I can see that with my child. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I play with her a lot, and I take care of her a lot, and we go to the playgrounds, and I can see many Vietnamese mothers there, and they always go like, "Oh, con ơi, té té," and then finally the child listens to the opinion of her mother or his mother, and it actually falls down, because the mother says like, "Okay, you're my child, and I'm telling you to fall down." I mean, obviously the mother was trying to prevent the kid from falling down, but I think the outcome of that is always that the kid loses confidence and falls down, because he hears her or his mother basically telling him or her to do so. Because I tried to observe my child, and basically whatever she does, she's quite certain that she will succeed, and most of the time she will actually succeed. Like if she crawls somewhere or tries to climb a wall or jump something, then she can do it. But if you say, "Oh, you will fall down," then she will probably fall down. And sometimes it may happen that she will actually get injured. So I'm willing to take this risk to save her creativity, because and that's just the first step, right? Or you can see like a child playing with an egg. An egg is like what, 1,000 dom, right? And it's in your fridge, and the child takes the egg and it sort of juggles with it and does something with it, and you go like, "Oh, don't do that, you will break it." But yeah, so what happens? Like if the child breaks the egg, I mean, you can even still cook it, and if not, then you just throw away 1,000 dom. But for the child, it's actually an experiment, right? Like when you throw the egg, it's an experiment in physics, right? When it breaks down, it's an experiment in biology, and it's all for free, and the child does it all by itself, and you don't have to pay. I mean, you pay 1,000 dong for the egg, but you don't have to pay for teachers, you don't have to pay for school, but the kid's actually educating itself on its free will, and very, very eagerly, and it loves it, right? And it supports its creativity. And I can see many parents in the West as well as here just trying to, "Okay, sit still, don't do this, eat like this, eat this, don't eat that." And the kid usually at first, the kid knows how to walk, right? You don't teach the kid to walk like, "Okay, take your left leg and foot and place it here, and then take your right foot and place it here." You don't do it like that. The kid just starts walking. And the same with talking, actually. You don't teach the kid like, "Okay, this is a subject and a verb, whatever." Just sometimes when the kid makes mistakes, you correct the kid, but not even always. Like you don't correct every single mistake the kid does or the kid makes, but eventually he or she will speak English or Vietnamese very well. And my kid actually can speak Czech and Vietnamese and English quite well, even at the age of 3. And I'm not even, yeah, I'm trying quite a lot, but maybe we speak Czech maybe 20% of the time, and Vietnamese about 60, and English about 30. But it can understand almost anything in the language, and it can communicate in all 3 languages. And so that's the long term that you, as a teacher in your classroom, you can't really influence, but the short term you definitely can do. And so I think what you should do as a teacher, you should get to know your students on a more personal level, and get to know their hobbies and their goals and dreams, aspirations, and build on that. Like you know that your student enjoys football, so give him speaking assignments related to football, or writing assignments related to football, and he will immediately learn more quickly and more enthusiastically, because he or she is actually doing something that he or she would be doing anyways, right? And yeah, there is one reference to Gardner and Lambert from 1972, who actually talk about positive internal motivation in language acquisition, and they differentiate two types of that. One is integrative and one is instrumental. So integrative is the desire to learn a language in order to communicate with people from another culture, which is obviously when you go to America and you don't understand anything, you have a desire to understand what the people are talking about. And the instrumental is the desire to learn a foreign language because it would fulfill certain positive goals, or such as getting a job, which is, yeah, it's like you want to have money. I mean, money, I think it's not the best of motivations, but it will suffice in the learning process. Or you want to learn whatever. For example, nowadays on YouTube, there are so many videos that you can learn stuff from, but most of them are in English. So you can actually, learn guitar or knitting or whatever you enjoy, and you can learn it from YouTube, and you can learn it in English. And like that, you will actually learn both English and the skill that you want to learn. So English is not the goal, but it's actually something that you learn as a byproduct, and you can actually, so you can combine these skills, or you can actually learn more things, or more issues in at once. So that's almost it then. And the conclusion is that if your motivation is strong enough, you can learn anything, and even more quickly and effortlessly than others. And I would say the task of a good teacher is to support and develop the internal motivation of students who already have it, as I was talking about it earlier on. Like, if the student already has their internal motivation, just leave them alone. They can do on their own. Just introduce to them the topics that you think that might support them, or that might even make their motivation even stronger, or things that you might think that they wouldn't know about without you, but in fact it can help their career or skill development. And so you aim assignments towards the topics that you know that the student is interested in. I have a student who plays basketball with Filipino guys in District 2, and that's why he's good at English, because he's not a very diligent student, in the sense that he would study all the time, or he doesn't even turn in many of his homeworks, but his English is better than most of the other students, because he has this motivation, because he likes playing basketball, and he plays basketball with foreigners. And so when I want to motivate him, I just tell him, okay, so prepare your speaking assignment related to either the Filipino culture, or the like playing basketball, or writing, the same thing. Or even if you give him a reading assignment, you just supply articles that are related to the topics that they are interested in. And I think the main or the most significant role of a teacher in classroom is trying to provoke or awaken motivation in students who are not motivated, internally motivated from their heart, let's say. And I don't think the correct way is just trying to threaten them with like bad grades, or if you don't turn this in, you can't take the next course, and that's just fear. But I think that you should actually really focus on these students and try to understand their needs and their family background and what they are interested in, what they are good at, if they have hobbies or if they work, and try to really awaken this internal motivation in them. If they work in a restaurant, then you should talk with them more about things regarding cuisines and waiting tables, whatever, cooking, or if there are Grab drivers, then maybe introduce them to the parts of motorcycles and cars and bicycles, whatever, so they can learn this vocabulary, although it might not be interesting to them at first, or it might not be useful. Then it will provoke, or it will awaken their motivations. So, and I think that there is one thing that makes it quite problematic in Vietnam. I can see it in my own classrooms. We have a lot of students in the classroom, like 20, 25, 27. So you can't really have a personal relationship with all of them, right? Because that would make you crazy. A teacher is also a person, and that is like mental hygiene is a big part of teaching. So you can't really, if you try to build a relationship with 27 times 4 people, because I teach about 100 to 150 students every semester, so my head would explode. So that is the problem, in the sense that I can't really perform the way I should and I would like to, because the amount of students is too big. In my country, if you teach, usually the normal classroom sizes, or even at university, I mean at high school, the classroom size is 22 students, but you usually split the English students, I mean the English classes, into 2 groups by 10 to 11 students, or even 7. I think 7 is like a great classroom size. And at the university, you have seminars that usually have about 15 to 20 people, but the students at the university are usually a lot better motivated than students in language centers or high schools. So so I think that what I've talked about, you can only fully appreciate and fully perform when you teach classrooms that are 10 and fewer. But the thing is that if you teach big classrooms, you are actually bound to 2 things. One is like clinging to the really great students, which even is my case, because at least 2 or 3 of them are listening to me now, and then try to help the really, really bad ones. But the problem is that if you do that, then the rest of the class will lose interest, because they will find your way of teaching too basic and too boring. So I'm still trying to adjust to this and find my way to cope with large classrooms, but it's still a thing that I struggle with. Okay, so I think that's it from me. And now, if you'd like to ask me anything, just feel free to do so. So thank you.
You are now unmuted.
We have a lot of as first we have mentioned time. Do you think that language safety in Vietnam only encourages intrinsic motivation?
Sorry, I can't, because I hear you twice.
Okay. So we get to this minute.
9:56. Yeah, do you think that language assessment in Vietnam generally encourages intrinsic motivation? No, I think I've talked about it. I can hear the echo. I don't know why. Yeah, I've talked about this, that that in my opinion, it really doesn't, because if the motivation is coming out of you, then the way people are taught in Vietnam is not really
You are now muted.
ideal. Yeah, it's no, I don't. Sorry, I was hearing myself talk and it was distracting. So I think that it actually doesn't, because it's all very prescriptive, and it seems to me that, at least from what I've worked in high schools and elementary schools and kindergartens, the teachers are actually not really trying to provoke intrinsic motivation. And the reason for it also being that they have to cope with really, really big classrooms, even bigger than I have to. I've taught 46 high school students in one classroom, and most of them weren't even interested that much. So you can't really do anything like in a classroom like that. And so I would say that the most important thing in a classroom like this is just to survive, because if you don't take care of your own mental health, then it can make you sick, it can make you depressed. And so I think that this is a really big problem of the Vietnamese language teaching system, that the classroom size is really, really massive. So should I just answer these questions in the chat window? Yeah. Does creativity have anything to do with educational principle of Vietnam, in which rote learning?
Learning a layer.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I think both these questions actually relate to what I've said. That it's a part of the problem that in Vietnam, individuality in learning and creativity is not desired. And I might be wrong, but if you look at the performance of Vietnamese people speaking foreign languages or speaking English, especially in speaking, because I've met so many Vietnamese learners or speakers of English who could actually read and write and really well, and they would score really high in all these tests. But when they speak, or when they spoke to me, I wouldn't be able to even understand what they were talking about. And a part of what is the pronunciation, and a part of which is the fact that they were too timid, too shy, I don't know, or didn't have enough experience with speaking. They speak very silent, you know. That if you listen especially to Vietnamese women speaking, even Vietnamese, but especially foreign languages, they speak more silently than they usually do. So it makes them even less comprehensible. So I think, yeah, there is the rote learning is actually it's actually a problem as well, in my opinion. Okay, your way. Sorry. Yeah. Your way to teach vocabulary of memory palace is great. Can you suggest some other ways to teach vocabulary more creatively? Well, the thing is that I'm not really an expert of memory palaces. I really enjoy doing it myself when I learn languages, or especially when you try to learn phone numbers or even names or anything. Just, I mean, there are many videos on YouTube you can watch, or even the picture that I introduced here was taken from like WikiHow memory palace. So it's nothing that I would create from the top of my head. So if you liked it, then by all means try to get to the bottom of that, and try to exploit YouTube, or even all these websites like Udemy and these learning websites. You can actually pay $5 or $6 to get a concise course on this. And I really recommend that in learning languages, right? And so you use your own language to use vocabulary from English, and then you just always have to remember that the pronunciation cannot be like English, because when you try to match Vietnamese pronunciation with the English word, like what I did with like singing a song and song in the river, then you have to always make the last mental operation that you have to adjust your pronunciation to the target language. Can you give examples of your external motivation in your class? Well, the thing is that I just do what most teachers do. I give assignments, and I try to reward for fulfilling them rather than punish for not fulfilling them. But I have to say, I don't really believe in external motivation, which is a problem because I'm still a part of the sort of current educational system, and I wouldn't want just to bash Vietnamese education. It's everywhere. The standard or systemic or standardized state regulated education everywhere works like that. Like, oh, you're a teacher, so I'm above you, and I give you assignments, and you fulfill them. And if not, then I will punish you, or I will reward. And if you do, then I will reward you by good grades or whatever. So yeah, so I am actually against, or maybe the bottom line of my speech or my talk today is I'm against external motivation. You can't really do without it, because then the thing is that for example, the students of mine at the university, they've gone through the whole 12 years of learning using external motivation. So if you suddenly stop using it, they can't really adjust to the new system, because your mind is not flexible enough, because if you do something for 12 years, you can't really change it or even unlearn it this quickly, or maybe ever. I think that's a problem of most people, that they learn stuff when they are young, and then they actually build their whole lives based on this, and they can't really unlearn it. So, and that's why I think that older people actually struggle with the new world, and it's hardly ever young people who say, oh, our society is going down the tube, we are doing so poorly, and I wish I could live 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Young people hardly ever say this. But older people are always like, oh, when I was young, the society was better, people were nicer to each other, like students were more diligent and even smarter. And everybody will tell you that. My mom would tell that to me. Her mom would tell her that to me as well as her. And I hope that's my life goal, that I will be able, when I turn 50 and 60, I will still be able to say, okay, this is your world. You live in a different conditions than I used to, and I can't judge that. I don't think which is better or worse, but your life is yours, my life was mine, and it's your world. So I hope it will be this way. But I'm digressing now. So yeah, so I don't like external motivation at all. Would you say that less interested they're in school content? Oh, that's a. No, I think it's
1006 is the question.
Yeah. Just maybe a reply to the comment of Hung that the internet or new media is a massive trend now, and you can't disregard that. And that's also what some people, usually the older ones, oldest teachers, struggle with, because they don't know what TikTok is. I know now what TikTok is because of my students, right? But I would never go on TikTok on my own. But I think you can use TikTok for teaching, because that's what the students like, and that's the internal motivation. If you use TikTok for teaching, then you will have a bigger chance of succeeding, because they want to do stuff on TikTok, and they want to go on the internet, and you just have to make sure that they go on the internet in the places where you want them to go, and they don't drift off and just search Facebook when you want them to do something on the internet. And I'm using quizzes or Kahoot sites in my teaching, and that always attracts the attention of students. And computer games are the same thing. Like you shouldn't disregard that or condemn that, because that will only alienate the or just make the students lose interest. So I think internet materials is something that you can't really avoid anymore. I agree with you that teachers don't always take risks. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Tanya, I don't really understand the question. In case, do you take risks for the students to understand? But I don't know, do you mean like if the fact that we are going to use these new methods, or like the methods that are not approved by the system, and the performance of the students will go down, like are we responsible for that? I don't know if that's what you meant, or do you understand it? Like, or what? So yeah, so I hope that answered, because I think that it's your, like, yeah, the teacher always has to bear the risk that he's responsible for the teaching outcomes. So but I'm not sure if that was what you asked. So how can that person be able to spare his time to spend time on other fields without motivation? Well, I think you always have to find the motivation for whatever you want to learn. If your question is that how to learn things that you really don't enjoy learning, that goes like in conflict with what I've been trying to tell you here. I think that the key point is to find a way of loving the stuff that you want to learn, because that will actually speed up the process. So the question shouldn't be, how do I learn things that I don't want to learn, but rather, how do I make the things that I don't want to learn likable to myself? And that's, I can't really give you a concrete example or a concrete method to that. You have to figure that out for yourself, that whatever you don't like but you really need to learn, then you just have to find a way to like it or abandon it and just stop learning it. How could we enhance teachers' motivational skills from the classroom? Yeah, that Jimmy's question, I think that's a very good question, and a question that I don't really have an ultimate answer to, because if the if there is a lack of internet, or too many students not paying attention, and too many students in general, you can't really do much. But the thing is that, yeah, if you work in a high school or elementary school environment, you should always ask for at least one teaching assistant, and try to split the class in groups. So I think there is no answer to or no method or no way to enhance motivational skills when there is like when the class is not behaving orderly. So so I mean, the thing I would suggest is, like, make classrooms smaller, but you can't, because of whatever social or political or financial reasons. So it's just like that we have to accept that you can't perform your 100%, but you have to actually lower your performance in order to satisfy the other needs, like staying sane, or being able to teach further, or being able to maintain at least basic order in your classroom. Okay. Yeah, the preferred rote learning then, because it's the easiest, right? Like education, if you look at education in general, it comes from not the Middle Ages, but like Industrial Revolution, right? And so the key point was, okay, we need people to be like machines, like individual people were the sort of the individual parts in the machine, and each part had to work or perform the same operation their whole lives or their whole working hours, right? The whole time they were working. So the key point or the key sort of idea was to make these people as homogeneous and as alike as possible, because it made sense. Like if you look, even nowadays, if you look at factories, you need the people to be able to sit still, perform the job they have to perform all over again. So they have to be good at the particular thing, and they have to sit there. They shouldn't really question anything because the machine or the system is already set up, and there is no way for creativity or invention, because it's the most smooth or the sort of most efficient that you can make it already. And if the workers start questioning that, it will only lead to the fact that the machine will get broken or the production will get slowed down, right? But our world doesn't work like that anymore. And now we are on the verge of what they call the fourth industrial revolution, which means that most of this sort of factory work will be taken over by machines. And people who nowadays do these jobs will actually find themselves unemployed, and they will have to requalify to some other jobs. And that will be really problematic, because these people don't really, because they lack creativity and motivation, it will be really difficult for them to learn something new. But the rote learning is just this, and it's easy. Like you set your students in at the desks, and they all learn the same things, and you don't really need more material. You don't really need to be individual and or individualistic, and you save your own power, you know, like our capacity. As a teacher, it's a lot easier to go to the classroom, tell them what you think that they should know, and then make sure that they actually got it by means of some kind of test. And then, oh, if they have 60-70%, then they probably got it, right? So that is it's just, I think it's sloth. It's being lazy, and the whole system is lazy, because, and also the whole system in most of the world is underpaid. And if you ask the teachers to be this individualistic and helping students on a personal level and being engaged and making more extra effort, then you should pay them better. Because obviously, if you get a salary that is not even the average in your country, then you don't really want to put more effort into your work. You just want to do as much as it's necessary, and then go back home to your own life, right? So I think that's the reason. And one more, is there? Oh, thank you, collecting games. Yeah, 70 students in a class. Then I don't know what to tell you, really. I would probably shoot myself if I had to teach that. So I think you are really brave, and try not to get crazy, or try not to end up in like that street. What's that? Lee Kiet, I think, has the biggest mental hospital in Saigon. So try not to end up there, right? But I can't really help you much with this one. Okay, any more questions, or do you want to ask anything in person? I mean, there are 33 of you, so it would be a shame if nobody asked anything.
It's very hard to change how people.
Yeah, because maybe I'm not entirely talking like a teacher, but as a avid foreign languages learner myself. And also English is my second language as well. So I had to go through all the things that the Vietnamese students now have to go through. And so maybe I have a different opinion about that. And also I'm not, a member of any educational committee or a Ministry of Education. Maybe if I ever get a job there, then I will realize that it's actually a lot more difficult to change the behavior than I feel now. And I know that it's just, as I said, if you can't change the classroom size, then you can't really do many of these things. And this is the thing, nobody's asking me anything in person because you're all very timid and shy and you don't want to speak out loud. If I had this talk in America, I couldn't shut my mouth because I would be asked so many questions.
Yes, you for personal contacts.
Yeah. Yeah, I can give you my my email. I'll just type it in. I should have my faculty email, but it's not really working very much. So I'll give you my personal one. So, okay. I can still see Quinn typing. Oh. Yeah, vocabulary for kids. I used to teach in a kindergarten, and at the beginning of every lesson, I was given a few pictures, and I would try to make some, like act the pictures out or do something funny for the kids to remember that. But yeah, if they're at least elementary, then you can. I would go gaming. I would just like quizzes or whatever, or just make them use their cell phones because that's what they do all the time. Or that they might be. I'm not really, because I'm not teaching this age group anymore, so I'm not really familiar with all the software and applications that are available. But I bet you there are some vocabulary teaching apps designed for that purpose, so you can investigate and just because what do kids like now? They don't like anything else but spending their time on their cell phone, right? So at least make them spend that time on their cell phone doing something that will be beneficial in other ways as well. Otherwise they will just look at like sneezing pandas on YouTube. So